of his cabinet now filing in. This address comes just a day after the first contest of the presidential primary season in Iowa, and it's a day before the Senate is scheduled to take a final vote in Trump's impeachment trial. Our Nathan King is standing by on Capitol Hill. Nathan, what do you expect to hear tonight?
Well, in fact, your timing is perfect, Mike, because we just got excerpts in the last few minutes from the White House saying what the president will lay out in his speech. Essentially, remember the American carnage he talked about in his inauguration? Well, this is the great American recovery that he's now talking about, basically all a bid for his re-election. He campaigned on making America great again. He says he's made it great again, so that's a reason to vote him in. He's going to talk economic statistics, factory numbers, job numbers, but also when it comes to foreign policy, really singing the fact that he has renegotiated the NAFTA agreement, now the USMCA, and also signed a Phase 1 trade deal with China. He's also going to talk about how he wants to end the wars in the Middle East, despite the fact that the US and Iran, of course, nearly came close to starting yet another war not so long ago. The big question, of course, and I know you're going to ask me this next, so I'll preempt it, is he going to mention impeachment? And that really depends on whether we get, as somebody commented today, a Twitter Trump or teleprompter Trump. I think he's going to be more teleprompter. He knows this is a time where he can appear more presidential than perhaps he is on social media. And of course, you know, he has a captive audience. All the people in front of him, and certainly one behind him, have actually wanted removed from office and moved very quickly to do so in the impeachment in the House and, of course, the trial in the Senate. So you can see there Nancy Pelosi side by side with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. You know, that is the division. And what's going to be really interesting is Nancy Pelosi is going to be sitting behind the president, if you like. We'll be able to see the reaction on her face. And as the U.S. president addresses this joint session of Congress, all the House managers are all going to be sitting right next to each other. By the way, I just want to point one other thing out. You'll see a lot of women congressmen and other female guests wearing white. 19th Amendment, 1920, establishing women's right to vote. Very important milestone as we celebrate this State of the Union, Mike.
And you make a good point. The Speaker of the House will be sitting behind him, and they have not spoken in months. He, of course, tweeted, said she's crazy Nancy, and
exactly.
Right now we see, I think, the president himself is starting to make his way in now. So we've seen the two of them, Mike Pence, the vice president, and Nancy Pelosi, kind of awkwardly standing next to each other. And let's listen real quick.
The President of the United States.
Yeah. This, of course, the president entering, and we'll have to see on the right-hand side of the screen will be a lot of the Democratic lawmakers. Let's see if they shake hands with him. Normally, that's the tradition, but he's working the left side of the aisle. Now he's going over to the right, and they are putting their hands forward. But again, to the Nancy Pelosi point, you know, he sent that testy letter to her. There was the tweet about calling her crazy. It's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic there, because it seems rather awkward right now with Vice President Mike Pence standing next to her. They don't seem to be making a lot of small talk.
Yeah, actually, I saw as he came in, and you could hear him, we could see his lips move, and he said, "Hello, Nancy." But I think those are the only two words that we've seen them exchange so far. Yeah, I mean, they're not only are they in different parties, they are on completely different spectrums ideologically, Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence. So it's going to be very interesting, the dynamic. But, you know, the thing is that Nancy Pelosi didn't really want to do impeachment. You know that from the Mueller report, but felt after the Ukraine whistleblower that she kind of had to do it. She was kind of pushed into it by a lot of her caucus as well. So, you know, she may be happy this is over, because, as you know, the polls have been moving in the US president's favor. The latest Gallup one, for example, is actually put it in his highest of his presidency as he's walking through now, shaking the hands of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, by the way.
There he is with the Chief Justice, who's presiding over his trial, and tomorrow will be there when the verdict will come in.
Yeah, incredible. John Roberts, who's been sitting there patiently reading the questions of all the senators, the Chief Justice, just shaking the president's hand. And of course, he's going to be the one that essentially will announce the acquittal of the president that we expect in the next 24 hours. Quite an incredible moment of political theater here, where we've had the president here, Nancy Pelosi there, the speaker behind him, getting a copy of the speech. She wants him out of office. Did you see that? They barely looked at each other. Quite interesting. Yeah, he's He's soaking up the applause.
Working his coat right now. We also have with us, providing some insight, Steve Chigueras. He's a political journalist and commentator sitting here with me this evening. Yeah. One of the things we're going to hear him say tonight, and we've got an excerpt, is many politicians came and went, planning to change or replace NAFTA only to do absolutely nothing. But unlike so many who came before me, I keep my promises. That's going to be a big message from him tonight, isn't it?
Well, yeah, he's setting up his re-election campaign to an audience of what could be 50 million people watching this speech. And he's got the floor to himself. And it's not just the folks in the room that he's speaking to, Democrats and Republicans who are there, but it's the American people. And this is really his first real introduction to Americans en masse for his re-election campaign. And so he's going to be touting all the things that he believes he's done well as president, and he's going to talk about promises that he's going to make for the second administration if he gets re-elected this fall.
And we're just about a few seconds away from the announcement where he will step forward and deliver his remarks. He usually goes for about 80 minutes, so let's listen in.
The President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States. And my fellow citizens, 3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again. America's enemies are on the run. America's fortunes are on the rise, and America's future is blazing bright. The years of economic decay are over. The days of our country being used, taken advantage of, and even scorned by other nations are long behind us. Gone too are the broken promises, jobless recoveries, tired platitudes, and constant excuses for the depletion of American wealth, power, and prestige. In just 3 short years, we have shattered the mentality of American decline, and we have rejected the downsizing of Americans' destiny. We have totally rejected the downsizing. We're moving forward at a pace that was unimaginable just a short time ago, and we are never, ever going back. I am thrilled to report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been. Our military is completely rebuilt, with its power being unmatched anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. Our borders are secure. Our families are flourishing. our values are renewed, our pride is restored. And for all of these reasons, I say to the people of our great country and to the members of Congress, the state of our union is stronger than ever before. The vision I will lay out this evening demonstrates how we are building the world's most prosperous and inclusive society, one where every citizen can join in America's unparalleled success, and where every community can take part in America's extraordinary rise. From the instant I took office, I moved rapidly to revive the U.S. economy, slashing a record number of job-killing regulations, enacting historic and record-setting tax cuts, and fighting for fair and reciprocal trade agreements. Our agenda is relentlessly pro-worker, pro-family, pro-growth, and most of all, pro-American. Thank you. We are advancing with unbridled optimism and lifting our citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed very, very high. Since my election, we have created 7 million new jobs, 5 million more than government experts projected during the previous administration. The unemployment rate is the lowest in over half a century. And very incredibly, the average unemployment rate under my administration is lower than any administration in the history of our country. If we hadn't reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success. The unemployment rate for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans has reached the lowest levels in history. African American youth unemployment has reached an all-time low. African American poverty has declined to the lowest rate ever recorded. The unemployment rate for women reached the lowest level in almost 70 years, and last year women filled 72% of all new jobs added. The veterans' unemployment rate dropped to a record low. The unemployment rate for disabled Americans has reached an all-time low. Workers without a high school diploma have achieved the lowest unemployment rate recorded in U.S. history. A record number of young Americans are now employed. Under the last administration, more than 10 million people were added to the food stamp rolls. Under my administration, 7 million Americans have come off food stamps, and 10 million people have been lifted off of welfare. In 8 years under the last administration, over 300,000 working-age people dropped out of the workforce. In just 3 years of my administration, 3.5 million people, working-age people, have joined the workforce. Since my election, the net worth of the bottom half of wage earners has increased by 47%, 3 times faster than the increase for the top 1%. After decades of flat and falling incomes, wages are rising fast, and wonderfully, they are rising fastest for low-income workers who have seen a 16% pay increase since my election. This is a blue-collar boom. Real median household income is now at the highest level ever recorded. Since my election, U.S. stock markets have soared 70%, adding more than $12 trillion to our nation's wealth, transcending anything anyone believed was possible. This is a record. It is something that every country in the world is looking up to. They admire. Consumer confidence has just reached amazing new highs. All of those millions of people with 401ks and pensions are doing far better than they have ever done before, with increases of 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100% and even more. Jobs and investments are pouring into 9,000 previously neglected neighborhoods, thanks to Opportunity Zones, a plan spearheaded by Senator Tim Scott as part of our great Republican tax cuts. In other words, wealthy people and companies are pouring money into poor neighborhoods or areas that haven't seen investment in many decades, creating jobs, energy, and excitement. This is the first time that these deserving communities have seen anything like this. It's all working. Opportunity Zones are helping Americans like Army veteran Tony Rankins from Cincinnati, Ohio. After struggling with drug addiction, Tony lost his job, his house, and his family. He was homeless. But then Tony found a construction company that invests in Opportunity Zones. He is now a top tradesman, drug-free, reunited with his family, and he is here tonight Tony, keep up the great work, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Our roaring economy has, for the first time ever, given many former prisoners the ability to get a great job and a fresh start. This second chance at life is made possible because we passed landmark criminal justice reform into law. Everybody said that criminal justice reform couldn't be done, but I got it done, and the people in this room got it done. Thanks to our bold regulatory reduction campaign, the United States has become the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world, by far. With the tremendous progress we have made over the past 3 years, America is now energy independent, and energy jobs, like so many other elements of our country, are at a record high. We are doing numbers that no one would have thought possible just 3 years ago. Likewise, we are restoring our nation's manufacturing might, even though predictions were, as you all know, that this could never, ever be done. After losing 60,000 factories under the previous 2 administrations, America has now gained 12,000 new factories under my administration, with thousands upon thousands of plants and factories being planned or being built. Companies are not leaving. They are coming back to the USA. The fact is that everybody wants to be where the action is, and the United States of America is indeed the place where the action is. One of the biggest promises I made to the American people was to replace the disastrous NAFTA trade deal. In fact, unfair trade is perhaps the single biggest reason that I decided to run for president. Following NAFTA's adoption, our nation lost 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs. Many politicians came and went, pledging to change or replace NAFTA, only to do so, and then absolutely nothing happened. But unlike so many who came before me, I keep my promises. We did our job. Six days ago, I replaced NAFTA and signed the brand new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement into law. The USMCA will create nearly 100,000 new high-paying American auto jobs and massively boost exports for our farmers, ranchers, and factory workers. It will also bring trade with Mexico and Canada to a much higher level, but also to be a much greater degree of fairness and reciprocity. We will have that fairness and reciprocity, and I say that finally because it's been many, many years that we were treated fairly on trade. This is the first major trade deal in many years to earn the strong backing of America's labor unions. I also promised our citizens that I would impose tariffs to confront China's massive theft of America's jobs. Our strategy has worked. Days ago, we signed the groundbreaking new agreement with China that will defend our workers, protect our intellectual property, bring billions and billions of dollars into our treasury, and open vast new markets for products made and grown right here in the USA. For decades, China has taken advantage of the United States. Now we have changed that. But at the same time, we have perhaps the best relationship we've ever had with China, including with President Xi. They respect what we've done because, quite frankly, they could never really believe that they were able to get away with what they were doing year after year, decade after decade, without someone in our country stepping up and saying, "That's enough." Now we want to rebuild our country, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are rebuilding our country. As we restore American leadership throughout the world, we are once again standing up for freedom in our hemisphere. That's why my administration reversed the failing policies of the previous administration on Cuba. We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people, but Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to your family. Thank you, Mr. President. Great honor. Thank you very much. Please take this message back that all Americans are united with the Venezuelan people in their righteous struggle for freedom. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Socialism destroys nations, but always remember, freedom unifies the soul. To safeguard American liberty, we have invested a record-breaking $2.2 trillion in the United States military. We have purchased the finest planes, missiles, rockets, ships, and every other form of military equipment, and it's all made right here in the USA. We are also getting our allies, finally, to help pay their fair share. I have raised contributions from other NATO members by more than $400 billion, and the number of allies meeting their minimum obligations has more than doubled. And just weeks ago, for the first time since President Truman established the Air Force, more than 70 years earlier, we created a brand new branch of the United States Armed Forces. It's called the Space Force. Very important. In the gallery tonight, we have a young gentleman, and what he wants so badly, 13 years old, Ian Lawnfay. He's an 8th grader from Arizona. Ian, please stand up. Ian has always dreamed of going to space. He was the first in his class and among the youngest at an aviation academy. He aspires to go to the Air Force Academy, and then he has his eye on the Space Force. As Ian says, most people look up at space. I want to look down on the world. But sitting behind Ian tonight is his greatest hero of them all. Charles McGee was born in Cleveland, Ohio, 1 century ago. Charles is one of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen, the first black fighter pilots, and he also happens to be Ian's great-grandfather. Incredible story. After more than 130 combat missions in World War II, he came back home to a country still struggling for civil rights and went on to serve America in Korea and Vietnam. On December 7th, Charles celebrated his 100th birthday. A few weeks ago, I signed a bill promoting Charles McGee to Brigadier General, and earlier today, I pinned the stars on his shoulders in the Oval Office. General McGee, our nation salutes you. Thank you, sir. From the Pilgrims to the founders, from the soldiers at Valley Forge to the marchers at Selma, and from President Lincoln to the Reverend Martin Luther King, Americans have always rejected limits on our children's future. Members of Congress, we must never forget that the only victories that matter in Washington are victories that deliver for the American people. The people are the heart of our country. Their dreams are the soul of our country, and their love is what powers and sustains our country. We must always remember that our job is to put America first. The next step forward in building an inclusive society is making sure that every young American gets a great education and the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Yet for too long, countless American children have been trapped in failing government schools. To rescue these students, 18 states have created school choice in the form of opportunity scholarships. The programs are so popular that tens of thousands of students remain on a waiting list. One of those students is Janiyah Davis, a fourth grader from Philadelphia. Janiyah. Janiyah's mom, Stephanie, is a single parent. She would do anything to give her daughter a better future. But last year, that future was put further out of reach when Pennsylvania's governor vetoed legislation to expand school choice to 50,000 children. Janiyah and Stephanie are in the gallery. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here with your beautiful daughter. Thank you very much. But Janiyah, I have some good news for you, because I am pleased to inform you that your long wait is over. I can proudly announce tonight that an opportunity scholarship has become available. It's going to you, and you will soon be heading to the school of your choice. Now I call on Congress to give 1 million American children the same opportunity Janiyah has just received. Pass the Education Freedom Scholarships and Opportunities Act, because no parent should be forced to send their child to a failing government school. Every young person should have a safe and secure environment in which to learn and to grow. For this reason, our magnificent First Lady has launched the Be Best initiative to advance a safe, healthy, supportive, and drug-free life for the next generation, online, in school, and in our communities. Thank you, Melania, for your extraordinary love and profound care for America's children. Thank you very much. My administration is determined to give our citizens the opportunities they need, regardless of age or background. Through our pledge to American workers, over 400 companies will also provide new jobs and education opportunities to almost 15 million Americans. my budget also contains an exciting vision for our nation's high schools. Tonight, I ask Congress to support our students and back my plan to offer vocational and technical education in every single high school in America. To expand equal opportunity, I am also proud that we achieved record and permanent funding for our nation's historically black colleges and universities. A good life for American families also requires the most affordable, innovative, and high-quality health care system on earth. Before I took office, health insurance premiums had more than doubled in just 5 years. I moved quickly to provide affordable alternatives. Our new plans are up to 60% less expensive and better. I've also made an ironclad pledge to American families. We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. And we will always protect your Medicare, and we will always protect your Social Security, always. The American patient should never be blindsided by medical bills. That is why I signed an executive order requiring price transparency.
We're listening to the State of the Union address from President Donald Trump, the man who gave us the two words American carnage, instead going with unbridled optimism, a more optimistic tone. Steve Shigaris is still here in the studio with us as we kind of recap some of what's already been said. He talked about a great American comeback, borders secured, families flourishing, pride restored, and also saying he engineered a blue-collar boom. What's your takeaway? It seems like more of a campaign rally than a State of the Union address. He's really got all of the elements of what he wants to do in this, if he gets another 4 years, and what he's done so far.
Well, the Republicans at the beginning chanted 4 more years, which already sort of set it up as a campaign rally of sorts. But yeah, he's laying out all of the positives that he sees in his first few years as President of the United States. Of course, a lot of these things are more complicated than Donald Trump taking full credit for all of this stuff, but he's got polls on his side. There was a Gallup poll out today that showed him with the highest approval rating of his presidency at 49%. It shows that confidence in the economy is higher than it's been since 9/11, 2001. And so he's basically playing into what Americans are saying about his presidency, that they like about his presidency. The question is, moving forward, is this going to continue to resonate with Americans through November? And are Democrats, once they settle on a presidential nominee to run against him this summer, will that person be able to make an argument, no, he's not good enough, we have better solutions, you should give us a chance? That's the big question.
And it's interesting, as you were just saying, one of the things that I think about with this election, it's really kind of framed around the two E's, the economy, which he's really pushing tonight. The other E, exhaustion. Are voters just exhausted of these tweets and kind of him calling out people and kind of the back and forth and kind of the rancor we see out there? Do you see it kind of falling into that as well? Like when the voters go in to pick who they want, are they just going to be like, can I put up with another 4 years of this? Or is the economy so great, I just am going to go with him?
Well, we'll see. Like, I mentioned this poll, and it's showing that all of that rancor is sort of taking second stage to the economy and how people feel about his performance as president, which I don't think a lot of people 3 years ago would have predicted the president be in a situation going into his final year in his first term where people are saying such positive things about his performance. I think people automatically he would assume he would just fall on his face because he's inexperienced, or because of the things that he said, or because of the way he promised to go about doing things. Yet Americans are looking at the economy and, again, overwhelmingly positive about the economy. Whether that's going to be the only thing that they vote on in November, it's a big question. I think the Democrats run a risk, and we saw this with the impeachment process, and again, we're seeing this in polling, that people just aren't sold on what the Democrats are doing in terms of going after this president. And there's a worry that this focus on the president and their dislike of this president has really soured some voters, in the sense that it's just looking like a big partisan food fight to a lot of Americans. And the Democrats, that's not all positive for the Democrats. And they've got to worry about, as they go forward, is this just going to be an anti-Trump year? Is it just going to be, let's point out all the bad things that Donald Trump's done and all the things we don't like about him? Or are they going to add discussion to the table of things that they would do in terms of policy, in terms of the economy, in terms of healthcare, that they argue would be better prescriptions than what this president is doing? That's the big question for Democrats.
Let's dip back in and listen to a little bit more before we close things out. The President of the United States, again, getting a rousing response from Republicans. You see Nancy Pelosi sitting, but Michael Pence standing there and applauding.
51 years, the cost of prescription drugs actually went down. And working together, Congress can reduce drug prices substantially from current levels. I've been speaking to Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa and others in Congress in order to get something on drug pricing done, and done quickly and properly. I'm calling for bipartisan legislation that achieves the goal of dramatically lowering prescription drug prices. Get a bill on my desk and I will sign it into law immediately. With unyielding commitment, we are curbing the opioid epidemic. Drug overdose deaths declined for the first time in nearly 30 years. Among the states hardest hit, Ohio is down 22%, Pennsylvania is down 18%, Wisconsin is down 10%, and we will not quit until we have beaten the opioid epidemic once and for all. Protecting Americans' health also means fighting infectious diseases. We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together on the coronavirus outbreak in China. My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat. We have launched ambitious new initiatives to substantially improve care for Americans with kidney disease, Alzheimer's, and those struggling with mental health. And because Congress was so good as to fund my request, new cures for childhood cancer, and we will eradicate the AIDS epidemic in America by the end of this decade. Almost every American family knows the pain when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. Here tonight is a special man, beloved by millions of Americans, who just received a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis. This is not good news, but what is good news is that he is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country. And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please. Rush and Catherine, congratulations. Thank you, Catherine. As we pray for all who are sick, we know that America is constantly achieving new medical breakthroughs. In 2017, doctors at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City delivered one of the earliest premature babies ever to survive. Born at just 21 weeks and 6 days and weighing less than a pound, Ellie Schneider was a born fighter. Through the skill of her doctors and the prayers of her parents, little Ellie kept on winning the battle of life. Today, Ellie is a strong, healthy 2-year-old girl sitting with her amazing mother, Robin. In the gallery, Ellie and Robin, we are glad to have you with us tonight.
All right, we've been watching the State of the Union address from Donald Trump, and he's just referred to this young girl in the audience. For those of you who are not familiar with Rush Limbaugh, he's a fiery conservative radio talk show host here in the United States who was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom during the event this evening. And let's talk a little bit about this, because it's not uncommon for presidents to place people throughout. But I heard one news anchor recently say that Donald Trump's, a lot of people say he's a reality TV star, but he said he's more than that. He's a producer. And this was very well choreographed and produced. Talk to us about the placement of the different people and how he cited their stories and how this advances his political aims this evening.
Well, it's interesting. The Rush Limbaugh thing in and of itself, the news came out that Rush Limbaugh has stage 4 lung cancer. Rush Limbaugh has been an unabashed supporter of this president ever since he was a candidate. It is sort of an odd invitation to have somebody so partisan that it doesn't seem to fit in terms of a State of the Union, an address to Congress, to have a radio talk show host so partisan, not only as a guest of the president, but then honored in front of the entire Congress. It's almost and I understand he's not well, and the president is trying to honor him, but at the same time, it's almost an affront to the Democrats. It's not a move to unify Congress at this point. This is a celebrating conservative talk show host. It's just interesting. It's an interesting, but it also plays into the entertainment value that Trump sort of puts on a lot of these speeches, rallies, whatever he does in front of a television camera. There's a little bit of playing to the audience as well, and he's playing to his base by having a guy like Rush Limbaugh receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom at his State of the Union. Some of the other people that he invited, I thought was very interesting. The one that really stuck out to me was the young girl who received the Opportunity Scholarship from the president. This is again, it almost felt like a reality TV moment where Donald Trump was the host of a reality TV game show and giving away a prize to this girl to go to the school of her choice. But it plays into the larger discussion of school choice, which is something the president has been pushing his entire first term. And also, it really gives him an opportunity to criticize Democrats and their backing of what he called government education, something I think you're going to hear him talk a lot more about on the campaign.
We're talking a lot about the domestic side of things, but let's talk a little bit about international, because he did talk about China. Let's run a little soundbite from him, and then I want to get your reaction on the other side.
I also promised our citizens that I would impose tariffs to confront China's massive theft of America's jobs. Our strategy has worked. Days ago, we signed the groundbreaking new agreement with China that will defend our workers, protect our intellectual property, bring billions and billions of dollars into our treasury, and open vast new markets for products made and grown right here in the USA.
Steve, you watch politics, you've watched it for some time, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because it seems like candidates run for president, they say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and you kind of look at them and you say, well, they're never going to get this through, or they're never going to do that, but you want them to be an honest guy once they get to the White House, and that's what you hope for. Trump's kind of turned that upside down. He says, I'm going to have a Muslim ban. People say he's never going to do that. I'm going to build a wall. People say he's never going to do that. I'm going to take on China, have this prolonged trade war, and yet he's done that, and yet when you look in the newspapers, 15,000 false or misleading claims. He's kind of turned it upside down. Talk to me about that dynamic.
Well, he makes these promises broadly and then goes after them broadly and goes after them in a way that I think ruffles a lot of feathers about people who've worked in Washington or diplomats or people who have done this another way for decades. And he's come in and shaken things up, and people are looking at this and saying, okay, for instance, let's take the China trade deal. People are saying, how is this tough talk, how is treating China this way going to work? It's never worked this way. We have to sit down and we have to negotiate. And Trump has basically said, no, throw that all out. It hasn't worked. I'm going to try something new. In fact, he said, in terms of President Xi, he said, I told them, they've gotten away with so much. It's about time someone said that's enough. And, it's a much simplified way, a very simplified way of describing how he handled this whole China negotiation. But to the average American who's watching this, the 50 million people who are tuning in tonight, that resonates. And whether it's going to work for him or not remains to be seen. But he's been telling people, I'm going to go to Washington, shake things up, do things differently, and make some changes. And to show people, look, we've got a deal with China. Now, we don't know what that's going to mean in 3 or 4 or 5 years, but he can say, I've got a deal with China, and I promised you I'd do that, and I did it.
And the fact checker is going to have a field day with a lot of what he said, because he also said we have perhaps the best relationship we've ever had with China, including with President Xi, which I think there are a lot of people who would dismiss that. Steve, thanks so much for your analysis.
My pleasure.
It's great having you here on the set with us. Our colleagues in Beijing will have more on the State of the Union coming up after an update on the coronavirus outbreak. Thanks so much for watching this evening. I'm Mike Walter.